Tekrar hoş geldiniz. Bugünkü
Welcome back.
Erkan Bayol bizlerle olacak.
Today's fourth session is about to start. We have Erkan Bayol. He is the managing director of Untitled Chapter, and he will be talking about how to develop an indie in AAA.
Merhaba, hoş geldiniz Erkan Bey.
Hello, welcome. Thank you. Let me share my screen.
Paylaşabilirsiniz.
Yes, please. I guess you can see it now. Yes. Well, the audience, the members of the audience will send their questions via the Q&A box. So at the end, you can look at the box and answer the questions. Okay, let me introduce myself and then do the presentation. Then we will address the questions. I was planning to do this in English, but I guess we don't have any English speakers, so I will continue in Turkish. So if you can reach me at any time, and if you have problems in understanding the presentation, I can try to explain it in English. So to avoid confusion, I would like to highlight one thing. As you know, today we will be talking about AAA on the basis of a specific complication, such as the games which are in 3D and which are targeting core players. And how can indie developers develop this game, and what kind of actions should we take on this road? But when we use the concept AAA, an independent and indie developer trying to develop a AAA game is dangerous because the AAA has a vast definition. When you look at Call of Duty and Valhalla, they are AAA games, and an indie game developer developing this game is almost impossible. But you need to understand one thing: there are differences between AA and AAA, and both of them are offering very important opportunities, and there is a spectrum in AAA. Even the big gaming companies have different productions. There are two AAA games, but in terms of development time, the size of team, the marketing budget can be quite different in both of these games. So at least I will focus more on, if you want to do a AA production, which is close to AAA, which if you don't want to develop a casual or hyper casual game, I will be sharing some tips to do that. First of all, you need to understand one thing: indie developers should position themselves very carefully, because if you're an independent developer, you may have experience in AAA studios, just like us, just like Bungie or Riot Games. Maybe you have background, we have some colleagues who have background in these companies, but we don't call ourselves AAA because there can be different expectations when you do that. And the good side of this is that when you talk to your players, and if you publish vlogs like us, if you want to close communication with your audience, if you have a Discord channel, which you should, and when the game is ready for release, the pricing point of the game gives a clue to the audience. For example, when I say $60 or $55, you can tell people that you're AA, not a AAA, but the price tells them, gives that expectation to the players. They will have higher expectations, and you don't want those expectations in the beginning. So be careful about the pricing point. And also, we will be talking about more details about this. You need to be careful about one thing. Things are different from what they were 15 years ago. We have tools, development tools, engines, graphic engines, which are more accessible. And for us, for unexperienced people, they are easy to learn. You can look at YouTube and learn how to use creative engines and other engines that are bought by Amazon from CreaEngines. There are tutorials and other materials, documentation available online. So we have many advantages and some things that we should be careful about. Let's go into the details. When you sit at your desk to work on a project, the first thing to do is to think about the pillars of the project. In the 90s and in late 80s, we always thought about what kind of game we want to play, but this changed. The industry grew and matured, and the bigger numbers were spoken. And when we have more financial risks, then people stopped saying, I want to play this kind of game, so I want to develop this. Now we are at the climax of this. A proper developer, publisher, investor, when they start a production, if you want to keep the content in a scope, it will still take a long time. There will be significant costs for marketing and advertisement. So you cannot be just emotional about this, and you cannot just say, I want to play this kind of game and just develop it. So we want to do this. We recommend that first you should ask, why do you develop this game? This is a very strong question because it will reveal many secrets to you. It will force you to discover many secrets. Why do I develop this game? Why do I develop it for this market or for this platform? So all day you should be asking yourself the question, why? As you find the answers to all of these questions, as you survive these questions, will help you and your team be more mature and have a stronger war plan. Here you need to focus on your market analysis. You need to analyze your market very well because on the core game side, there are many things: strategy games, arcade games, shooter games. There were many interview requests from big companies because they were wanting to develop certain games. And I always ask them why, because everyone wanted to develop League of Legends, so they wanted a similar game. And I asked them why. Actually, this is having this plan is not make will not make you a leader. You're just following the herd. We see this on the hyper casual side. It is not hyper casual, but Bassamo, we have very successful companies, and other companies think we should do what they do. So you need to ask 500 why questions before doing that. So when you look at the market and choose your target audience, and then analyze the games that address that audience. What are the weaknesses and strengths? What are the opportunities? Without seeing opportunities, you cannot go into this because it will be tiring and expensive. So if you try to develop something without preparation, and if your project is not very well, things will explode because the investors and publishers will not buy it because they will ask you why, even if you fail to ask yourself. And since you don't have any answers, you will not be able to convince them.
Kitlenizi çok iyi tanıyıp
So
onların ne
know
istediğini
your
bilin.
audience, understand
Ve
their
işlerine karşı çıkarken
expectations, and
yapabiliyor musunuz ona bakın.
see if you can find something that will address their
Bunu tanıdıktan sonra
expectations. Look at
zaten yavaş
strengths,
yavaş
weaknesses, and
ilerledikten sonra
opportunities, and
yavaş
we
yavaş
will see
bu
this in
fırsatı
in,
devreye
in
sokmaya
our
başladıktan
slides.
sonra
Then
başaracağınıza doğru
you
geliyorsunuz.
can
İlk etapta dediğim gibi
understand how you can leverage that
keşke
opportunity. But
efekt
first of all, we choose the market, we
hangi
choose the target audience,
efektli karışık mı
women or men or mixed,
bölgeler
or which region,
aslında.
because there is no such thing as a global game. In China, some games may be successful, but it may not
Değer bir içeriği vardır.
do well in
Çözemezsiniz.
West.
Adamlara
Some
o
games may
rakip
do well in Turkey, but they may not
herkes
do
bir
well
şey
abroad.
bekliyorsanız o da çok tehlikeli.
So don't try to do a game for
Marketi
everyone.
analiz edin ve
Analyze your
fırsatları bulmaya
markets
çalışın. Bu bir.
and try to see the
İkincisi
opportunities.
şu
And
an
that's the
çok
first thing.
desteği
Secondly,
çok
you
tükenmiş
have the
pazar
opportunity and you have the
oluşturmak mümkün
target
değil.
audience.
Bir kere
Then
önemli olan bir konuya daha değinmemiz gerekiyor.
you
Çünkü
need to address something that is very
motivasyonu
important,
konuşmamız gerekiyor. Çünkü
motivation.
burada
Because what I mean by
kendinizi
motivation
motive
is
etmeniz.
the motivation of yourself and your team. I talk about this because
Yani core taraftaki prodüksiyonların çoğunun uzun
most
sürmesi
of the productions on the
kabul
course side
edilebilir bir
take
şey
a
değil.
long time.
İlk gün
And it
kadar
means that
heyecan
the motivation that you have on day one will not continue.
neyse böyle bir
So
topluluk
you have
içinde
12, 20, or 50 people.
bir şey var
You are
ortada.
excited about a
Az önce
project,
bahsettiğimiz şeyler de yani o neden sorularını da
and
sormak
you
kendinize.
have asked yourself the why questions,
O an itibariyle herkes hemfikir.
and everyone agrees on the answers. Everyone is excited.
Ve sonra yeni fikirler
But 3 days later, there will be new questions. 3 weeks later, there will be new questions.
melek yapınca konuşursunuz orada.
When you talk to a venture capital or an angel investor, and when they say no, you may be disappointed.
Hop, bir iki kişi böyle tık pıt pıt pıt pıt ekipten çıkmaya başlıyor.
And you may see people leaving the team,
Out olmalar falan.
and you can see things fading out.
Uzun yolculuk olacak. Çok
So it will be a long journey,
dalgalı bir denizde hareket ediyor olacaksınız.
and you will be
Zorlayıcı bir yolculuk.
sailing on stormy seas. So having a robust team
Kaza olacak da yani o kazalarda bu
and avoiding accidents on the way
bir kere
is important. To do that,
kurulmuş olması lazım.
you should have a well-established motivation for the team. I don't mean the motivation on day one, because in Turkey, this is what we do. We are always too excited in the beginning. But keeping it alive is what matters. Maybe you have kids. Maybe you are about to graduate. Maybe you are motivated to do something, but there can be some other member of the team who has 3 kids and who has to feed them and pay the rent. So you need to have a plan that will help you finish that journey with minimum damage. And to ensure protection, you should be sure about one thing. How will you finance this project? In our project, we talk about these things. In the beginning, we could have gone to investors because I had a circle, but in the beginning, going to the investor has a cost. If you can convince an investor in early stage, the risks will be high. So their authorities, their shareholder percentage will be higher. So in the beginning, you can have a dream project like a family, and then you take this risk. There will be something different, because that family company will be turned into something more professional, because there will be an investor who has money in this, who wants to protect his money. So that investor will have some worries, and they will force you to do things at some points. And so you need to talk about this. How will you finance this? If you want to go to a publisher or an investor, and if you want to go with investor, which kind of investor you will go? A venture capital or an angel investor? So the answers of these questions will give you an idea about how hard your journey will be. So you will be more realistic about what to expect from the future. So all team members will have a more realistic projection about the future. So when the team agrees that for 6 months they will suffer, there won't be a big problem. Because if they say, if you promise them that everything will be good, there will be problems. So it's important to talk about this motivation, the stages that you will go through. And if you are going to do something with an angel investor, or if you will go to a Kickstarter, you will need to think about what kind of impact that will have. Maybe in the beginning, you may not pay salaries, and you can give them some privileges such as shares. You can make them small payments, etc. Maybe you all agree on this. And what will happen after you get the investment? You need to talk about this, because if you fail to talk about this, as time goes by, people will start talking about this. The interviews, the negotiations with investors, people will start wondering what will happen next. And if you're not prepared for this, there will be problems. Not only the team leader, but everyone should have thought about this, because this is a long journey. We started in April 2020 on Angel E. We didn't want to go to an investor at that point, but we knew that we were going to suffer. But we talked openly about this, and everyone was prepared for this. They made their plans for this. But at times we had some significant problems, but the team did not break apart because we were prepared. Because if this will happen, we will do this. If we get investment, people will get this. So the picture was clear for everyone, and it has been it has been 1 year, and many things have changed. Some people have lost their loved ones because the life is going on, and our life is affected by what's happening outside. So there are shocks coming constantly. But some people had to stay away from the work for a long time, but in the end they came back because we had the motivation. So this is why motivation is important. The main pillar of indie developers is the ideal of the team. It's not money. We are not at that stage now because we are a startup. Highly probably financials is not your strength. The other side, the idealism and motivation, should be your strength. So we agree on this, and the first thing to do on production side, the first milestone is MVP. So the first pillar of your road should be this. If you do AAA or hyper casual, your first milestone should be minimum viable product, MVP, a product which you can offer people and get feedback for. And most importantly, the unique selling point of your game, which will stand your game out among other games, which will make people play your game. Uh, so MVP means this polished game. You can call it MVP or work styles. But without doing that, if you are going into a big production, and you can't do that. I have been working in Blizzard for 30 years now. I want to do my own business. Maybe you can do this, but a big agent, if there is big money in it, they will not work with you if they don't see the MVP. So we have the marketing, we have the audience, we have the market, but we should also have a polished game which people can play and which people can give feedback about, and which people can have an idea about what the game will look like when it is completely finished. This is the first milestone. Without that, you cannot get any results with the publishers or the investors because they want to see this. And in this seeding stage, things may be different, but when things get serious, of course, they want to see this. They will want to see this. So without any doubt, this should be our first milestone. And how should we do this? So when we build our MVP, how should we design it? The first thing we should talk about here is the unique selling point, the things that will distinguish your game. For example, for Angel, our game is a combination of turn-based strategy and RPG. So our competition is obvious in the market. The companies who have a significant audience of players. So we should know this because we should know what our potential players will expect. If you do the exact same game, that's a problem because why should they stop playing the original game and play your game? But if you're doing a single player game or a premium game, there is a deadline for those games. For example, Axons, and you cannot have their versions from 10 years ago. At one point, players are bored with those games and look for similar games. Maybe in those cases, you can have some success. Maybe that player will be bored with that and will come to me. But you cannot convince the publishers and investors about it. If you want a solid model, you should have one or more unique selling points. This can be an improved version of a game. You can have a thematic USP, but you should also have some improvements in the mechanics of the game. There is a model I recommend my students. Maybe you know Stig Meyers, the legendary designer of the Civilization series, a veteran of our industry. He says 33%, 33%, 33%. If you are developing a continued version of a game, you should keep 33% of the original game. You should have the 33% of the popular features of the popular games in the market, and you should have 33% of new things. So USPs should not be in excess. Otherwise, they may backfire. And if you do 100% copy of an existing game, then you will also use. So in Angel, we had a ratio of 60 or 70%. 60 or 70% of the components of the game were taken from the existing games so that people could feel familiar to the game. But 30% of the components were new. This is my recommendation. You may not need the extreme ideas when doing that. In FPA shooter games, the unique selling point of these games was maybe you know Quake, Doom players, ancestors of FPS know that your livelihood would not renew, so you had to find some items to refill your life. And the sequels were quite unique, but the mechanics were not forgotten. They did not exactly clone the game. They wanted it Half-Life. They added some new mechanics to the game. Instead of shooting just shooting people, they had a story, a narrative. So these small touches, smart relishes can give you some unique selling points. And you should have them in MVP. If you have a well-working game, a good polished game with a prototype, and if you send it to a publisher, you will fail because the publisher will ask about the unique selling point, and the investor who knows about the gaming industry, they will also want to see or feel it. And you can say that these are the competitive aspects of my game, but you don't have the USP. Then it is not MVP, but they need MVP. The publisher, the investor needs MVP. They need to understand that you are really distinguished from your competition. They want to see it. So unique selling points are a must for MVP. And you should have it in your plans. You should implement them in your plans, in your MVP build. And in Angelic, what did we do? At first, by the way, I should mention the production. On the production side, in managing the production process, I recommend you use agile methodologies such as Scrum, and there are many other methodologies in agile. Maybe you have seen or heard about them. This is not just about standing up for 10 minutes and thinking about what you will do. When I say agile production, I mean you can use agile boards, the tasks in backdrop, the tasks in tests. These are just tools. When you do them, you are not automatically agile. What I mean is, now we're talking about MVP. You can divide MVP in smaller pieces. In Scrum, they call these sprints. Every 2 weeks, you can close a sprint. And every 2 weeks, we will complete something, and we will complete a milestone that will lead us to the MVP. So you will divide the main task into smaller divisions and try to complete them. Many people do this the wrong way because this doesn't mean that you should have a list of the things to do and you choose random items from that list and do them every week. So you can have a cycle in your head. It can be a week or a 1 day. In bigger productions, it can be 1 month. But in the end, that sprint should give you something that's working. It can be a working prototype or a specific component in the game.
Sprintin sonunda çıkan şeyin size bir feedback vermesi lazım.
But there must be a feedback in the end provided by that sprint, and it must be meaningful, not an inconsistent one. Or a feature set unrelated to MVP is not considered at all. And such approaches, especially in big productions, will ensure to disseminate your risk if there is any risk factor around, and it will help you to see those risk factors. And you shouldn't forget that we cannot see the future beforehand, and it may be a really cool product earlier, but it may be a total failure for the future. So just looking and feeling it, and spending time with the product is really important. Therefore, I recommend you to look at the production methods and to examine them. This is quite important. And let's talk about the opportunities now. We define the gain, and we find now how to find the opportunities and how to make use of them. The first step for this is MVP, and it's very important for investor. We already said all this. What about opportunities? And while doing all this, what can we make use of? As I've already said, and there are tools, engines, game engines are accessible. It was in 2003 that when I first started this job, we were using Arl engine, and licensing it was not possible without paying $500,000, and actually it was a huge money for us in those times. Therefore we are at this status right now, and there are many tools sold at reasonable prices, and sometimes they are even awarded to you or given to you as a gift due to competition. And so that the and for promotion purposes, those producers of the tools are providing you these tools, so that he says that the game developer will get used to and adapt to my tool, my pipeline. And there are not commissions, or there are many opportunities in front of us. There are very good technologies and engines, and using them are now easier compared to the past, for especially the ones who desire to produce core assets. And now EMG, the American company, also have many grant programs, or they also they're also in some organizations, or doing some organization, or organizing such competitions where they can select the developers, or publishers are also taking part in those organizations, and such grants, incentives, or investments can be obtained from them. So please search for them, try to make use of them, because it's both a prestigious thing and a serious financial support for you. This is very important for you. And establishing relations with the investor and the publisher is really important. And you have a presentation, you have a demo, but first you need to establish trust with the investors. Therefore the team is very important, but of course knowing the team, knowing the entrepreneur are really important for the publisher as well. Publisher shall also get used to and know the game developers. Therefore there are such competitions organized, contests organized. These are really strategic, and try to take part in them. And please attend the events and conferences such as this in the way. These are really important, and networking is done here while searching for investors, publishers, or while expanding your team. These platforms are really important. So COVID-19 is a pandemic which affected us all, but at the same time, it helped us to organize such virtual events. In real terms, the physical events were really expensive, because the flight tickets, the accommodation costs, these were really high, but and most of the people couldn't attend to the previous events just like this. And I used to go to the events in the US where when the dollar was really low compared to today. But nowadays, due to the exchange rates, it's really difficult to attend to such events abroad. But thanks to COVID, let me say, in brackets, now virtual platforms are used to organize such events, so that people can attend to these webinars and conferences. You can also decide a budget for this, and there are many opportunities. Please participate in them, and it's networking, and it's a great source of inspiration and knowledge. And now we will talk about the partners. It is either the publisher or the investor. None is to be ignored. I already mentioned about the publishers and investors, but universally, there is not a single type of investment, and there is also not a single type of publisher neither. Therefore, we need to understand that yes, this is my game. These are the steps of my game and who can my ideal partner be. So an ideal partner shall not be a person who I totally oppose to. There are many people who want to be in the sector, but who do not have a consistent background. Actually, therefore, you need to select your partner very well, to which investor, to which publisher to go, and what will I provide or what do they expect from me. And they must be interested and they must have a knowledge about the sector. And if this that's and not consistent third party, then you will have to find another investor or publisher otherwise. Generally, the startups search for investments for growth, not for survival. But it is when everything is going very well, everyone are interested in you because a profit making company will draw the attention of the investors or publishers because there is a value which is growing day by day. And interestingly enough, the investors will be interested in giving you money. But if you are in the period of bankruptcy, for example, and if you are searching for money for survival, no one will be interested because they will be scared of that. However, in our sector, there is a rapid running. Therefore, even if you do not need money, you just seek for money to accelerate your business. Because if your competitors run faster than you, then it means that you will be beaten by them. You need to accelerate. And with that incentives or in courage, with that courage, you will be accelerating your business. You will be running faster than, and your share, excuse me, the share you are going to the investor is also important because at the very beginning, if you provide 50 or 60% of the shares, then the investor will not be interested because the investors want to see a running business, and they must understand that your business is valuable for you. Therefore, keeping contact with the true people is important. And there are also some early stage venture capitals in Turkey. There are the ones in Turkey as well. So if you are searching for finance, you can search for those early stage investors instead of searching for the major or big scale investors in the first place. It's the same for the publisher. Now, at the RPG or turn-based strategy part, if you are developing a dominant game, if and if you go to a company who are dealing with casual games, then you are not involved in their portfolio. Your universes are totally different. Therefore, they will not be interested or they will not understand your purpose. Finding the right publisher is important here. And time is also a problem because you will be wasting time with the wrong publishers or wrong investors. And of course, you may make a list of those publishers and investors, but every minute is really important for us. Once you have a startup, and if it is an indie without much money, then you need to hurry up. And every unnecessary movement of yours will influence the ongoing of your team or of your startup. And the investment meetings must be very well organized. And I I am really dedicated to this job, and I sleep just 3 or 4 hours a day. because I am really busy. I am running from one place to another, and I am continuously dealing with the business and making new searches. And or you can also say that I will be fully independent without any investors or publishers, but you need to be very careful, and with great sacrifices you may continue your startup without any partner, but it's really difficult. So rather than such projects, start with small scopes. In Turkey, there is also incisors. This is a smart scope was picked by them, incisors, and they're also selling well. And if they are to search for investments just to grow their startup, they will search for it. So, with a small step, they started. So, your scope is also important if you want to be independent. At the beginning, it is also possible, and then investors may be interested in you when you become known throughout the country or throughout the region, and this is a chain reaction actually. One investor hears about you and the others also hear. So while making your plans, please consider all these aspects. At last but not the least, I'm talking about the triple publishers like Unsoft, Sega, or Deep Command or Electronic Arts. These are all opening a gate for the indies, I mean the independent developers. They are not at the gate, and they're all changing their vision. They're opening their doors for the indies. And at the moment, most of those publishers are uh, developing special programs or pipelines for the indies, and various opportunities may be found there too. And if possible, please consider your project as a cross-platform one. So you need to be careful in this too. Even Signiflag couldn't do it and failed in the end. So cross-platform, think of cross-platform, but of course not every platform, PC, PS, etc. But if you can think in the beginning as a cross-platform, then you can add the platforms to your basic. If your infrastructure is appropriate, you can also add those. You can start with PC and then continue with console because your design is compliant. And if you can do it, it will be good both for the investor and the publisher and for you. And that's all for my presentation. We can continue with the Q&A.
Evet. Öncelikle çok teşekkürler
First of all,
sunumlarınız
thank
için,
you very much for your
tecrübelerinizi
presentation
paylaştığınız
and
için bizimle.
sharing your experiences with us.
Soruları okuyayım ben Q&A
I can
kısmından
read the
size.
questions to you.
Can Ata sormuş. İki sorum olacak
John
benim.
Atta
Birincisi,
has
ben
two
yeni üniversiteye başlayan
questions.
bir öğrenci
I
olarak
am a
game developer,
student
İngilizce olmak istiyorum.
in the first
Büyük bir
grade. I
şirketler
want to be a
kendilerine
game
bir oyun
developer.
yazılımcısı alırken hangi noktalara dikkat eder?
What are the considerations of a big company while employing a game developer? And if we become an indie, how can we ensure the safety of our or copyright of our game? About this risk, we can say that there's nothing to do because no one will try to steal it from you. If there's a person who can steal it, then there's nothing to do for this. Dealing with the copyrights is a long way actually, and it's really costly. Therefore, you need to be speeding up the process. If you are developing it very slowly, then And if you mention it on every platform, then you are advertising yourself. Then companies will many companies continue with investment in that process. For example, if their product is attracting attention around, then they start the investments at once so that it cannot be stolen by the others. Therefore, if you will be an indie, instead of being afraid of the possibility of theft, try to accelerate yourself, your work. So do not talk about this actually in any platform. It will be antipathic at the same time. Therefore, there are not such events actually in our sector. Actually, if any person likes your game, downloads it and plays it. The first question is more important, is about career planning. In the long term, you have plans, you have targets, and what is the plan to go that target? If you say I want to work in triple A, double A, and core games, but I want to start with hyper casual and transit from that hyper casual to the triple A, etc. No, it's wrong. Actually, I have such resumes in my hand, but I really eliminate those resumes. You are the director of a company which publishes or which produces core games, and one resume says that these are my games developed, but these are the core games, but those were those failed, those were half, or those etc etc, but the director will think that yes, he or she is experienced. And on the other hand, another resume says that I have hyper casual games. There are 40 or 50 hyper casual games, and I'm very experienced at it. But the core game producer company will not be interested in you because it's not relevant with their business field. Therefore, actually, there are many applications for one position in this sector. And if you start with a simpler method and continue with the advanced ones, then it will be your easiest way chosen. Therefore, please try the challenging one. I am also delivering speeches at many conferences, and at the conferences there were the representatives of many famous companies like Pixies or other companies in the sector. But the representatives of those companies also agree that changing the position is difficult. Actually, being an expert in one field means being an expert in that, and transition is not that easy. And I have some friends who are also who experienced this process. Actually, a close friend of mine was developing games in the core games, but he tried to focus on the hyper casuals, but for a long time he couldn't gain money, he couldn't earn, and it was really difficult times for it. And he went to Bulgaria to live with his sister, and then after a while a company, he started to work with a company, and now he is focusing on the core games again. Therefore, if you want to be specialized in hypercare, or if you want casual, uh, go in that direction. But if you want to be in the core field, then direct to that way. Second question, what are your suggestions about outsourcing the team to speed up the process, and what are the considerations while expanding the team? Actually, we talked about the asset store. It's really useful, and there is a good asset store as the CRE engine as well. You're trying to do prototype, for example. Actually, it will be challenging, and modeling a tree is not important there. You will find various things, various models in the asset store. So do not lose time drawing yourself. So just $2 or $3 can be paid for the models. So it is really accelerating you outsourcing such models. And in asset stores, there are even inventory systems which can be used as a filter for your game, or lobby systems there are, and you can use them per procure them and use them for a quick shaping or rendering for your game. But every program doesn't have its own asset store, but you can download it with reasonable prices. You can get them, and it will make you save time. These may be outsourced, and apart from that, voice over like services or fiber like services can be used. And outsourcing game design is impossible, but from animations to rigs, from models to concepts, you can outsource everything. My recommendation for you is that if there is any weak chain of the team, and if you cannot find manager, you can outsource that part, that weakest chain. Then there may be a game designer and a software engineer in your team, and you can be more comfortable in your art. Thank you very much. We have run out of our time. We have to finish it here. It was a fruitful session. Thank you very much for your participation. Okay, thank you everyone. Stay home and good day.